What's up, guys? Welcome to the Stats Free Sports channel. Let's get right into it. Here to bring you an NFL prediction video on Treylon Burks of the Tennessee Titans. I believe he'll be traded to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, let's get into why, guys. Treylon Burks, to me, obviously one of the more bigger busts of recent years. And I don't like using the term bust, but hasn't quite panned out yet, at least. Only going on year three, but the first 2 years have been marred by kind of bad play and also bad injury bug also, and I think he's should be on the move sometime throughout this draft process, right before, in the middle, or right after. And honestly, I don't even think it depends on what the Titans do. I think regardless of what they do, there are rumors about they might go Malik Neighbors if he falls to pick six. To pick seven. There's rumors that they might trade down and still get a receiver sometime. I think no matter when they get a receiver, one of the first 3 rounds, I think that person, whoever it may be, will be to replace Treylon Burks. They have DeAndre Hopkins left, the great DeAndre Hopkins on a 1-year deal. They just brought in Calvin Ridley on a big deal. So, they have Chris Moore as well, but they need probably one more young guy to really fill that role of Hopkins, which Burks could have been and should have been. Now they added Ridley, but as I said, you can't really, if you're the Titans, especially with a new regime, you can't really depend on Burks because he hasn't shown to be reliable. The best ability is availability, and he hasn't shown that. And I think really scouring the landscape is try to find a good landing spot for him. There could be some surprise teams I'm overlooking. I do like one other option than the Cowboys, which I'll get into later, but I think the Cowboys are clearly the best spot for him, and not just because of the former liking that the Cowboys had on Burks. A couple years ago when he was in the draft, the Cowboys had him highly rated on their board. They didn't take him, obviously, but they did like him a lot. Jerry Jones and Burks had the same alma mater in Arkansas. So, those things line up there. I think that's more icing on the cake for the Cowboys because they actually need a wide receiver. They did cut Michael Gallup, I believe, who's still available for agency. I'm not quite sure. I think he is, though. I haven't really heard his name or anything, but so much news comes out, you kind of miss things. But I think Michael Gallup, he's definitely off the Cowboys, but I think he's a free agent still. Right now, they only have CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and Jalen Tolbert, and also they have Martavis Bryant. I think the Cowboys, they can still keep Bryant, but they might cut Martavis Bryant, 32 years old, was once a potential rising star a long, long, long time ago, but obviously that time has passed. I think they either cut or keep him, but it doesn't really matter. But I think they bring in Burks to battle it out with Treylon Burks. They bring in Treylon Burks to battle it out with Jalen Tolbert, who I like a lot a couple years ago. I think in Burks' same draft class, I'm not mistaken, him, Khalil Shakir, I believe they're all in the same draft class. But I like Jalen Tolbert a whole lot back then. Hasn't really shown much yet. Hasn't really got the opportunity. He's normally been third or fourth in the depth chart and hasn't really got that much, that much opportunity to really show what he can do. This is the year for Tolbert, but it's NFL. This is the big leagues. You have to show improve. He hasn't proved that yet. So why not bring in some competition? So I like the idea of trading for Treylon Burks for a late round pick for either this year or next year, and then you bring him in as a third or fourth guy to battle it out with Jalen Tolbert for that third spot. And like I said, Martavis Bryant, 32 years old now. I don't expect much from him. He can be just depth, or he can, he's been out of the league for a while now. Until last year, so you keep him for depth. Depth. I like him getting money. I love it. He should have been a star. We all know what happened to him, all that stuff. So you can keep him. I will hope that they keep him on the roster for backup. Injuries do happen, so that'd be nice to keep him. But I think the main 4 guys on that roster obviously would be Cooks and Lamb, and then Tolbert and Burks can battle it out for that main third spot. I think that's the best case scenario for him. And as I said, going back to the Titans, I don't think they keep him. They have Callahan now, former Bengals coach, and he's a new man there. Normally, when a new regime comes in, they like to clean house of former bad picks, of former players that haven't really panned out. And Burks obviously fits that mold. Coming out of college, athletic, but he reminds me so much of N'Keal Harry. He reminds me so much of this year's draft participant in Keon Coleman. Burks, Harry, some of the other guys, big body guys, they make me nervous to go with Keon Coleman. That's why Keon Coleman is not on my first round list. I have him as a second rounder, and he's also a guy I believe that might not pan out either. Just like Burks, just like N'Keal Harry. Hopefully it does end different for Coleman than it did for Harry and for Burks and other bigger guys. But the separation thing is definitely real, man. And Burks has a little more speed on him, it feels like, than those two guys and Harry, than what Coleman has. But the injuries are making it worse also. Can't stay healthy, it seems, the first 2 years. And, it sucks because the Titans traded a superstar wide receiver that's cemented in stone as a great wide receiver in today's NFL. They traded him for seemingly little reason, and then they brought him in the same exact. Soon as they traded him, they drafted Burks not too long later, and he had a lot of expectations on his shoulders, and it hasn't quite panned out yet. So I think Callahan go ahead and do right by Burks, give him a new home, a change of scenery, and he goes to somewhere he could have went a couple years ago in the draft and go to the Dallas Cowboys. Now on to other possible fits for Burks. I really only like one other spot, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the thing is, if they bring in Burks, I think Burks would have to be a starter. And that's the thing. I know he's a first rounder guy. Had a lot of potential a couple years ago and still does now. But do you trust him to start for your team if you have playoff hopes? That's what I was saying about with the Cowboys. He's going to be a third or fourth string on that roster. So you're not really concerned if he pans out or not. He'll be a great addition if he does work out. But if he doesn't, it won't hurt you too bad. Going to the Steelers, where they just lost Deontay Johnson, he's now with the where's John? He's with the Panthers now. So if you have only really George Pickens as your number one guy, Calvin Austin, he's not a number two. So, I mean, you're really going to have to bring in Treylon Burks. I still think the Steelers could go after Tyler Boyd, former Bengal, who still is on the market. He went to school in Pittsburgh at Pitt. I think that makes sense there as well. So if the Steelers trade for Burks and they bring in Boyd as well, I wouldn't be as critical of the move. But if it's just Burks and then you have him, Pickens, and then Calvin Austin, that's a little tricky. I'm not really a fan of that one. Burks, to me, shouldn't be relied upon to be a starter right now unless he just breaks out in camp and looks amazing. But even still, you got to show me you can stay healthy for a full year first before I would personally trust you. So for me, I say the Cowboys are the main spot for him. The Steelers being a spot I wouldn't mind, but it would be a little wild to me. So I think it's Dallas, maybe Minnesota. They did lose KJ Osborne, bringing him with Jordan Addison. Not bad. Like I said, it's a couple spots that you could see him going to, but depending on the scheme fit, team need, all that stuff, And if Burks does work out, he has some good size on him. Burks can be a good red zone threat. He has quick feet, he has a big body, good size on him. He is athletic. So, just like Keon Coleman, just like Harry, if they aren't working out as every down wide receivers for whatever reason, I think you could bring him in for red zone targets also. And I think Burks could definitely jump out the roof. He's that athletic, just he doesn't have the separation to really get that much room when he's running his routes. So he's not really a deep in his bag route tree type of guy. He only runs a couple routes, so that's the thing as well. So trying to find the best home for him is kind of tricky. So you're going to have a good quarterback, one, to get the ball to him. Then you're going to have a good scheme and also an offensive-minded coach, or at least a good offensive coordinator to really scheme him up some plays because, as I said, he is athletic. I think he's more athletic than Coleman. He's more athletic than N'Keal Harry. He can do jet sweeps. He can do, other things as well, kind of trick plays and stuff like that can, give him some more added gadget plays that other big men his size can't really do. So he does have a little edge on those guys there that might give him more wiggle room and more teams that I'm not thinking of to maybe land them. But for me, I really love the Cowboy fit. Go to a contender. Go to a team that wanted you with the same staff. They had the same staff, same ownership, same players down there. So, what's the difference now? There should be no difference as far as wanting you. It's just, maybe the price tag is a lot lower, obviously, because you're not paying out where you're currently at. So the price tag is definitely lower. But I think the Cowboys should still want to try out and see what they have in Burks, and not really rely on him, because if they drafted him a couple years ago, he and did the same thing he did with the Titans, he would have been flamed out with the Cowboys, and then where would he go? So that's the question there. But right now, I think the Cowboys could definitely see what he has, and then they can go from there if he doesn't or doesn't pan out throughout the season, or maybe even in training camp. He could be cut again or something, or cut for the first time and move on somewhere else, or he can play great, stick where he's at, and then have a good career from this point on. But that's it for the video, guys. Like, share, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys next time.